Preface and Chapter 1 of The Escape of a Princess Pat. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Escape of a Princess Pat by George Pearson. Preface and Chapter 1. In order to remove all question of doubt in the mind of the reader, it might perhaps be well to state here that the facts as given are the bona fide experiences of Corporal Edwards, No. 39, No. 1 Company, PPCLI, and as such were subjected to the closest scrutiny both by the author and others before it was deemed advisable to give the account to the public. In particular, great pains were taken to do full justice to all enemy individuals who figure in the story. Recognizing the seriousness of the charges implied by the recital, all those concerned with it are extremely anxious that the correctness of the account should constitute its chief value. In short, the intention has been to make of the story a readable history. The main facts, having to do with the destruction of the regiment on the 8th of May, 1915, the identity and activities of the individuals mentioned, and the more important of the latter happenings, including the final escape into Holland, are matters of official record and of such have frequently been mentioned in the official dispatches. The more personal details are based on the recollections of Corporal Edwards' retentive mind, aided by his very unusual powers of observation and the rough diary which he managed to retain possession of during his later adventures. For the events preceding the capture of Corporal Edwards on the 8th of May, the author has relied upon his own recollections, as he too had the honour of having been an original Patricia. G.P. September 1st, 1917, Toronto, Canada. Chapter 1. Polygon Wood. The Princess Patricias had lain in Polygon Wood since the 20th of April, midway between the sanguinary struggles of St. Julien and Hill 60, spectators of both. Although subjected to constant alarm, we had had a comparatively quiet time of it, with casualties that had only varied from 5 to 50 odd each day. By day and night the gunfire of both battles had beat back upon us in great waves of sound. There were times when we had donned our water-soaked handkerchiefs for the gas that always threatened but never came, so that the expectation might have shaken less steady troops. Quick on the heels of the first news of the gas, the women of Britain, their tears scalding their needles, with one accord had laboured, sans rest, sans sleep, sans everything, so that shortly there had poured into us here a steady stream of gauze pads for mouth and nostril. For the protection of our lungs against the poison of the gas, they were at least better than the filthy rags we call handkerchiefs. We wore their gifts and in spirit bowed to the donors, as I think all still do. We soaked them with the foul water of the near-by graves, and kept them always at our side, ready to tie on at each fresh alarm. Once there had came word in a special army order of the day. Our Belgium agents report that all enemy troops on this front have been directed to enter their trenches tonight with fixed bayonets. All units are enjoined to exercise the closest watch on their front. The troops will stand to from the first appearance of darkness, with each man at his post prepared for all eventualities. Sleep will not be permitted under any circumstances. The consequence had been that night had been one of nervous expectation of an attack which did not materialize. We always carried fixed bayonets in the trenches, but the Germans were better equipped with loopholes, as they were with most other things, and were forced to leave their bayonets off their rifles in order to avoid any danger of the latter sticking in their metal shields when needed in a hurry, to say nothing of the added attention they would draw in their exposed and stationary position at the mouth of a loophole. The stand to had come as a distinct relief that morning, and always there had been the glowing fires of a score of villages. The great mass of burning Ypres stood up amongst them like the warning finger of God. Occasionally the roaring burst of an ammunition dump flared up into a volcano of fiery sound. The earth under our feet trembled in convulsive shudders from a cannonade so vast that no one sound could be picked out of it, and the walls of dugouts slid in, burying sleeping men. but, like the promises of God, there came to us in every interval of quietness, as always, the full-throated song of many birds. Our forces consisted of the French, who held the left corner of the Ypres salient, then the Canadian division in the centre, next the 28th Division of the regular British Army, and then our own, the 27th, with Hill 60 on our right flank. The enemy attacked both at Hill 60 and at the line of the Canadian division and the French, and we held on to the horseshoe-shaped line until the last possible moment, when one more shake of the tree would have thrown us up like ripe fruit into the German lap. So near had the converging German forces approached to one another, that the weakened battery behind our own trenches had been at the last turned around the other way and fired in the opposite direction without a shift in its own position. For our own protection we had nothing, and later still these and all our guns left us to seek new positions in the rear, so that only we of the infantry remained. Daily there had come orders to stand to in full marching order, to evacuate, at which all ranks expostulated angrily, and then perhaps another order to stick it another day, at which we cheered and slapped one another boisterously on the back, so that the stolid Germans over yonder must have wondered, knowing what they did, of our desperate situation. But the dreaded order came at last, and was confirmed, so that under protest, and like the beaten men that we knew we were not, we slunk away under cover of darkness on the night of the 3rd of May, to trenches 3 miles in the rear, and with us went the troops on 10 more miles of British front. The movement, as executed, was in reality a feat of no mean importance on the part of the higher command. Faced by an overwhelmingly superior force, our badly depleted 3 divisions had barely escaped being bagged in the net of which the enemy had all but drawn the noose in a strategic surrounding movement. In detail, the movement had consisted of withdrawing under cover of darkness with all that we could carry of our trench material, both to prevent it falling into hostile hands and equally to strengthen our new position. A small rear guard of 15 men to the regiment had held our front for the few hours necessary for us to shake down in the new position. Their task was to remain behind and to give a continuous rapid fire from as many different spots as possible in a given time, thereby keeping up the illusion of a heavily manned trench. Then they too faded quietly away, following us. Our new trenches were 3 miles behind those we had just evacuated in Polygon Wood. Zillebeck lay behind to the left, and beyond that, Hooge. We were in the open, with Bellewaerde Wood and lake behind us. We continued to face vastly superior forces. To make matters worse, the trenches were assuredly a mockery of their kind, and there was even less of an adequate support than before. And at that the drafts arrived each day, if they were lucky enough to break through the curtains of fire with which the enemy covered our rear for that very purpose, as well as for the further one of curtailing the arrival of all necessary supplies of food and ammunition. Every camp and hospital, from Ypres to Rouen and the sea, and from Land's End to John O'Groat, was combed and scraped for every eligible casualty, every over-confident office-holder of a cushy job, and in short, for all those who could by hook or crook hold a rifle to help stem this threatening tide. And in our own lot, even those wasteful luxuries, the petted officers' servants, were amongst us, doing fighting duty for the first time, so that we almost welcomed the desperate occasion which furnished so rare and sweet a sight. End of chapter 1.